despite his efforts in calling people, both in the Congress and in the National Security Agency, to stop the investigation into a Russian conspiracy with the Trump campaign. The investigation has continued. People have pled guilty. They've been brought to justice. And this is something that I don't think Donald Trump had a clue about before he became president.
I would absolutely echo that. I would say that we're a democracy and not even the President of the United States is above the law, and that our arms of government, including the U.S. Department of Justice, is an independent arm because its job is to uphold the laws of the United States, not to uphold the special interests of a particular president.
Howard?
Well, Donald Trump came into the White House dragging this blossoming controversy behind him, and it hasn't left him, and it's not going to leave him anytime soon. His people told him that it would be over by this year. It's not going to be over. I think it's going to last at least one more year, maybe longer. And the reasons are, as others have said, people have been indicted. People have decided to cooperate with the investigation. And I think that looking at two things. The obstruction part of it is going to be more political, and I think in the end more difficult for Bob Mueller because of the campaign that's begun and will be continued to discredit James Comey. The collusion part of it, I think, is where the money is and where the real controversy will be in the next year.
And Howard, you've covered so many administrations. There is a fair argument that inexperience, especially when it comes to Washington, can be good for a president. As you know, a lot more candidates have gotten into that White House saying they don't like Washington or they don't know Washington than the opposite argument. Senators rarely leave their hallowed chamber with a ticket from the American people to the White House. And yet Donald Trump went further than that. He didn't just say he didn't know Washington, he said he didn't know the Constitution. He didn't know how government works. He didn't know much of anything. I mean, he really ran on that. Speak to how that may have backfired for him, because it seems that the person more responsible for the appointment of Bob Mueller, which has haunted this whole year, is Donald Trump more than any other individual in the world.
Well, I think that's spot on, Ari. I think he had no concept of the ball game he was getting into coming to Washington. In New York, he was used to throwing his weight around in real estate development, used to somewhat fungible and expandable or contractible legal situations involving zoning or lawsuits or bankruptcies or whatever, where he could really push the system and ignore the system. Not here, at least not so far. His own ignorance is actually the deepest challenge to the constitutional order, into the rule of law here, and he's trying to make a virtue of it. But it's been disastrous. It's his ignorance that led to the special counsel to begin with, especially the dramatic firing of James Comey, and is saying to Lester Holt on our air that he did it because of the Russia investigation. Donald Trump, in essence, was in a way admitting to obstruction of justice on national television. Now the question is whether that will be politically muddied by the effort to discredit Comey. That's what the White House's strategy to get out of Trump's own ignorance is all about.
Right, and the other point, Maya and Nick, that comes up so often is, Donald Trump won't criticize Putin. He'll criticize everyone but Putin. I think this year amends that. He'll criticize everyone but Putin and Bob Mueller, which is extraordinary when you think about it. Now, there are other efforts, as Howard mentions, by people who are empowered by Trump, who work with or for Trump, who are attacking Mueller. But I'm going to show a lot of the comments he's made this year. He is unusually careful when asked about this one powerful man. Take a look.
Have you thought about or considered leading the dismissal of the special counsel? Is there anything that Bob Mueller could do that you would send you in that direction?
I haven't given it any thought.
Mr. President, are you considering firing Robert Mueller? Are you going to fire Mueller?
Would you be willing to speak under oath to give your version of
100%.
So if Robert Mueller wanted to speak with you about that,
I would be glad to tell him exactly what I just told you.
You're passing notes to the special counsel about Mueller. Can you talk a little bit about those?
No, not much. We're working with them. They're investigating something that never happened.
Do you think he would ever consider trying to have Mueller removed?
Well, I hope he's treating everything fairly, and if he is, I'm going to be very happy.
Robert Mueller, do you think he should recuse himself from this?
Well, he's very, very good friends with Conie, which is very bothersome.
Nick, you know it's hard for him You know it's hard for him.
Well,
In every one of those interviews, for him, that's holding back.
Well, he's not holding back. He's got other people doing this for him.
Doing the dirty work.
Doing the dirty work, sure. Look at the latest example with these GSA emails. I mean, that was the most bogus public relations effort you could see. It's so transparent. If they really had a problem with Mueller obtaining these GSA emails, they would have gone into court. They would have filed papers. The reason they can't is because they don't have a leg to stand on. There is no privilege. There's no executive privilege.
Let me push you on this. There is a difference here. I'm not saying whether it's good or bad, because I don't think it much matters what a client says. And in this case, they have gotten this voluble, loud, undisciplined client, the President of the United States, to avoid taking the bait in those questions. I mean, if those questions were about just about anyone else, Jim Comey, Jeff Sessions, Democrats in Congress, we'd hear a lot more than, well, I'm not thinking about it.
But the reason he's doing that is because he has others doing it for him. He's got members of Congress doing it.
There's a lot.
He's got this group from the Transition Committee that is making up this bogus PR firm with the GSA emails. He's got other people beating that drum. I mean, that's why he's holding back. He doesn't have to say anything.
Yeah, and you pointed this out on previous shows. It's also the way Fox News will be the megaphone for those positions. And I think the thing is he's actually learning that he really is not above the law and he has something to fear from the obstruction of justice charge. I would disagree with Howard on that one point in that it's a matter of political theater.
Oh, she'll get it cheap quick.
But from a legal standpoint, he's extremely vulnerable on obstruction of justice. He has publicly admitted to it. Essentially, he's learned that he's got to curb that. So I think it's much more about strategy and finally listening to his attorneys than anything other than, and maybe realizing that he can't directly fire the.
You get it?
Let me give Howard a rebuttal on that. I mean, Howard, as you know, anyone who's
there's by her chair. She's batting at it.
To get someone to confess, or in Donald Trump's case, it was, why'd you fire Jim Comey? And he said, Russia.
Well, as I say, he said it on television.
Connie's watching her.
I think he's aware of the fact that firing Comey is one thing, firing Bob Mueller might be another. I'm not arguing that he's going to do that. I think he will pardon some of these people who were indicted, possibly. I don't know, and I also think that Donald Trump thinks in his own mind that he did not collude, that there was no, and in his mind, that means a phone call, to Putin saying, okay, let's do this deal. I think Donald Trump is convinced that they don't have that kind of thing on him, so that's one reason why he's holding out hope that ultimately Mueller might possibly exonerate him. But anything short of
Mouse went in that bag, and she went after it and got it out, brought it out.
The obstruction case, if there is one, is more complicated in the context of impeachment and trial in the Senate. Donald Trump is fully aware of the fact of one number, and that's 67. That's the number that would be needed to convict him in the Senate. He doesn't think they can get there on the obstruction charge, I'm sure, because they're going to continue to politicize it.
I was going to buy your death.
To attack
She
Mueller,
got it.
to attack Comey, to attack the whole, and to assert that Donald Trump was perfectly within his power as president to fire Comey.
Right, which is the groundwork.
That's going to be their argument.
And that's the groundwork they've been laying.
Collusion is, if they're going to make the case in the House and the Senate for impeachment and conviction, in my view, it's got to be.
She brought him up out in the kitchen.
I want to get to that. You mentioned
7 minutes.
There are legal fights against Trump in 2018.